Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us on this the topic of immigration. We are very excited to be here to give you some information, and we'll have time for Q&A. If you do have a question, please enter it in the chat, and we will get to it at the end of the program. So, good morning, everyone, and thank. Okay. Sorry, I heard an echo. Somewhere around 25% of the population of the Village of Mamaroneck is of immigrant origin, individuals, families, and children born outside the United States. A majority are citizens or legal residents, a significant number are unauthorized, others are refugees or asylees. The question of how and even whether to receive these new arrivals often generates intense politicized debate in the United States in general, as well as in Mamaroneck. Sadly, it is a debate shaped as much by myths and stereotypes.
That's okay.
As
we just did. Yeah, we just.
American laws define different rights and benefits and duties and obligations for each group, differences which shape the challenges they face. Today, to discuss these important topics, we are privileged to have a recent refugee who will speak about his experience. We are delighted to introduce Frank Pierson, Vice President of Development for Neighbors for Refugees, and Jirandy Martinez, Executive Director of the Community Resource Center. Larry, thank you. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you all as well. And our president, Elaine Chapnick, is having some technical difficulties. Otherwise, she would, of course, be here to introduce our topic. I'm going to do both bios right now, and then we're going to start. Frank Pierson is currently Vice President of Development of Neighbors for Refugees. Prior to this position, he served as President for 3 years and Vice President for 3 years before that. He has been a member of the board and an active volunteer since the organization was formed at the end of 2016. In addition to his work with Neighbors, Frank has been the treasurer of St. John's Church in Larchmont for the last 7 years. He's active with many local nonprofits and recently served on the Town of Mamaroneck Housing Authority that oversees the Hummocks Park Apartments. He was president of the Larchmont Mamaroneck United Way for many years and served on the board of United Way of Westchester and Putnam counties. Frank worked for nearly 40 years in the insurance industry as an actuary and in senior management positions, including stints with companies in Barbados and Bermuda. He is a longtime Larchmont resident and is married with 3 grown daughters and 4 grandsons. And when he's not volunteering, he's probably on the golf course. Okay, that's a word on Frank. Now I'm going to read Jirandy Martinez bio. Jirandy is the Executive Director of the Community Resource Center, which is a nonprofit community-based organization that empowers immigrants and low-income families by providing the resources and advocacy to help them become self-reliant and thriving members of the community. Jirandy has been with the organization since 2008 as an ESL volunteer teacher, and she went to from that to program coordinator, to program director, to executive director, providing innovative community-centered vision. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Justice Studies and Humanities from John Jay College of Criminal Justice and a Master of Public Administration from the Marks School of Public and International Affairs of Baruch College. She's also a graduate of Hispanic Federation's Hispanic Leadership Institute and recipient of the 2018 Westchester 30 Under 30 Wonderkins. She is the Vice President on the Board of Nonprofit Westchester and represents CRC on the Mamaroneck Coalition for Affordable Housing. So you can see how fortunate we are to have such leaders here with us today to present. You'll see that how their knowledge, skill, dedication, and have made them so effective. So we're going to start with Frank Pierson, who will lay a groundwork for us to understand displacement of people around the globe, and then he'll bring it down more locally with his work with Neighbors for Refugees. Frank, take it away.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Ann. Are we going to see my slides? Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Could you advance the second slide, Mitch? I just thought I'd start real quickly with an overview of the refugee crisis around the world. As of now, there are over 100 million people of displaced persons, meaning that they've left their homes. Unfortunately, it says here it's the highest number since World War II. I've been involved with Neighbors since the end of 2016, and every year I can say the same thing. It's a new record every year. It's growing fast. Displaced persons, they can be split into multiple categories, but basically they can either be internal, meaning that they've left their homes or are still in their country. For example, a lot of Sudanese have left their homes, but have just fled to other parts of their country. Or they've left their country either as asylum seekers or refugees or some other category. Next slide. And it's a worldwide problem. Refugees come from 4 out of the 7 continents, and depending on if you consider Central America part of North America, you can say 5 out of the 7. The only continents that don't really have many refugees is Australia and Antarctica, unless you consider penguins fleeing their refugees. Most of them are coming from 5 countries, and in 2022, 93% of new refugees have come from just 5 countries. There's Syria, Venezuela, Ukraine jumped right to the list, top of the list within 1 year. It shows you how quickly things can happen and go badly in a country. Most of the refugees are in 5 countries, with the possible exception of Germany. Those are usually countries that are in contact or abutting the countries that these people are fleeing from. You notice on there that United States isn't on the list. We don't have a lot of refugees, and the refugees on this list are people who are leaving those countries but don't want to stay there. They want to either go home or they want to go find their place somewhere else. So refugees, we've taken in millions of refugees, but once they get here, they're not on this list anymore because they found a more permanent home. Next slide, please. I just want to talk about status. Jirandy's going to get into this a little bit too, but what is a refugee? There is the U.S. Customs and Immigration Service has a formal legal definition of refugee, but we tend to use refugee in a broader sense. We use the UN High Commission for Refugee definition that basically says anyone who's had to flee their country due to violence or persecution, they're a refugee. You can be a true refugee, a legal refugee. You can be here on humanitarian parole or this thing called temporary protective status, asylees. For us, for Neighbors, we consider all of them refugees. One of the things that, as Jirandy will also say, is refugees, or at least most of the ones we deal with, they're here legally. They have the right to be here. The U.S. government has sanctioned them being here under various different programs, either the Refugee Act or under temporary protective status, or the Afghan evacuation or United for Ukraine. They've all given these people the rights to be here. For us, refugees, rather than asylees, most of our refugees are typically sponsored by someone who's already here, either an individual or a group like Neighbors for Refugees or HIAS or International Rescue Committee. They're usually supported by people. They're not here and flailing around on their own. They usually have some level of support. And then just to be clear, refugees are legal residents. They can work, they do work, they want to work, they pay taxes, they want to be part of the community. They're eligible for governmental benefits just like anybody else, including SNAP and Medicaid and TANF and other things. And their kids go to school. And so that's an important part of the next generation, is having them get into the schools and get an education. A lot of these people, we have a family from Sudan. They were in a camp in Jordan for 7 years, and their kids had no education for 7 years. And we're trying to get them back up to their levels of reading and get them educated. Next slide. So one of the questions someone asked me was, why do refugees resettle in the area? It's a very expensive part of the country, so why do they come here? Typically, there's 4 reasons. One is they know someone here. They have what they call a U.S. tie, or they have a relative. They want to come here because they know there's a community here. There's a large Ukrainian community in Yonkers. There's an Afghan community in Hicksville. There is a Burmese community in Queens. And so they come here because they think they can come and become part of a community. They also come here because they think there's a lot of job opportunities in New York. They have someone who's willing to sponsor them. Totally unknown, but they might be willing to sign what they call an I-134, which is a fiscal sponsorship form that the U.S. government uses. And sometimes it's just luck of the draw. They're in the pool and they need to go somewhere and they end up here. That's the hardest one because they really have sort of a hole that they have to dig themselves out of. Next slide, please. So just a little plug for Neighbors. We're not that much different in the top thing. We help resettle these families. We have 3 levels. We give full sponsorship where we provide them housing. We get an apartment for them. We give them support for living expenses, a lot of volunteer work. We help them find employment, help to get the kids in school, give them tutoring, all the rest. We also then have a level we call partial, which is we might give them a limited amount of financial aid or volunteers. And what we do the most of is what we call moves only. And that means that some other group is sponsoring them, but they need furniture and help with setting up an apartment and filling it. So we do a lot of those. We also give a lot of grants. We call road independence grants. These are to help these people get on the road to self-sufficiency. They might want to get a driver's license and need the help with the fees. They might want job training. They need a computer for their work or for kids for the school. So we give grants for those. A lot of them, especially refugees who have been here for a while, really had a problem during COVID. A lot of them got unemployed. We worked actually with Jirandy, and we gave a lot of food gift cards to a lot of their asylees to help them with that. We provide loans, and then we do advocacy and education, meeting with groups like the local summit to talk about the plight of refugees and how local people can help them and accept them. Next slide. So our experience over the last 6 years with serving refugees is that we've settled 40 families here. There are a lot of other groups here that are doing it. There's Hearts and Homes for Refugees, there's Reset, there's something called ICNA, the Terrytown, the River Towns, Reset. So there's a whole bunch of groups that have been bringing them in. I would say hundreds of people, hundreds of refugees would come in. These families really want to be independent. You'll probably hear from Rohan, like he really wants to be on his own. They want to have their own job. They want to live and be self-sufficient. So most of them get jobs fairly quickly. Within 3 to 4 months, most of them get jobs. The kids adapt, they get in school, they start learning English. Our support for them, we give support up to 12 months, sometimes longer, but we try to sort of have a cutoff time so that they know that there's sort of an ending, that they need to get themselves on their own 2 feet. And for most of our families, they've flown the coop. They're fairly independent and living on their own. That doesn't mean we abandon them. We keep the relationship with them from time to time. They'll come and ask us for additional support, grant, or when something happens and they have an emergency and that they need some help with, and we'll continue to do that. Next slide. Now, I'm not going to read this. I'll leave this on here just for a couple minutes for you to read. This was an email that we got from the son of one of our refugees. And I put it here just because it gives a sense of hope and resilience and a desire for these refugees to assimilate, come here and be part of the community. And like I said, the big message that comes out of this is that they're here, they're hopeful. Many of them feel like they're very thankful that they're here and they have a place and a safe place to be. In closing, I'd just like to make one observation. One of the title of this is the impact of refugees in our community, or immigrants in our community. I don't think, at least in Westchester County, over the last few years, the number of new refugees coming in, I'm not talking about asylum seekers, but refugees coming in under the normal program, I'm not sure there has been that big impact on our community, only because the numbers are not that great. We're talking about hundreds of people in a community, in a county that has millions of people. But the communities have an incredible impact on the refugees. I'd say the impact is more in that direction in terms of, we've had, trying to find housing is an issue. But when we do, we have found a lot of landlords have been very willing to rent to refugees. Some of them even give us breaks off of their rent to help them. The schools have been incredible in terms of providing services and all the rest. And the community in general has been very welcoming. So, on behalf of the people we serve, I'd like to thank the whole communities, including the people on this call. I'm thankful that you're here and listening and want to learn more about what's going on with refugees. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Frank. Your dedication is apparent. And I just want to tell you, after this, we're going to put in the chat some links so people can see if they're moved to come forward in any way, to help. And there are many ways that you can do that. So I'm going to probably repeat that message as well. Jirandy, I'm turning over the microphone and the slides to you.
Thank you, Larry. And I'm just so grateful to Frank and just for sharing Mohammed's little story. I think, even touches me in a way, and I work and live among the community. And I think like anything else, these refugee families are like anybody else. So I really appreciated reading this from a 13-year-old's perspective. It's no different than an American-born child. I can put up my slides, but as you know, the Community Resource Center is your local organization dedicated to empowering new immigrant and low-income families. And the communities that we serve are essential workers, men and women in the low-wage worker sector, mostly from Central and South America, although we do have Rohan today who will be sharing his story, and he's from India. The people that we serve are children and youth of immigrant parents. Mostly their incomes are at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, which means that they're basically making $18,000 to $35,000 a year, depending on the family. And in Westchester County, we all know that that's certainly not enough to afford housing in this community. These families live in mixed status homes. The majority are living in the Village of Mamaroneck, but also surrounding communities in the Sound Shore area like New Rochelle and Portchester. And as I'm mentioning, the local housing crisis and it continuing to surge, we are actually seeing more and more client members being forced to move further away, like to Yonkers or Elmsford or even Peekskill. At CRC, we do welcome individuals and families who join our community for various reasons. And the majority are new migrants and asylum seekers. And Mitch, for the slides, I'm just on, I think, the third slide of the other presentation. I think the other one. Oh, okay. Maybe we don't have mine up. But that's okay. I'm happy to talk through what we're seeing at the Community Resource Center. So we do welcome new migrants mostly. We welcome everyone, but the majority of the folks that we see are new migrants and asylum seekers. And these are, as Frank said, there are different people categorized. New migrants voluntarily leave their native country and settle in another country and can return home if they need to. Asylum seekers flee their home countries, citing fear for their lives, but their status isn't determined yet by our federal government. In Westchester County, there are, as Frank mentioned, a number of refugee families who are fleeing for their lives and cannot return home, and they are eligible for supports from their host country. The majority of families that we see are not eligible for any support from the government because they voluntarily left their home and entered the country, some legally, some not legally or illegally. And so they are basically kind of living in the shadows and just trying to survive. But like any human, we all gravitate towards, following the people who we know and people who are our people. And so many of the community members that we see and welcome are here because they know someone, they have family here or friends here, but also because of the work factor. Mamaroneck and the neighboring communities have welcomed and prospered from waves of immigrants over the last 50 years and more. I think if you look at the Mamaroneck community from a bird's eye view, you see that there are a lot of work opportunities. Back in the 70s, people there, the Harbor Point allowed for a lot of work opportunities with the harboring and fishing, all of that. We also have a lot of work industries in the Village of Mamaroneck. And as our community has developed and introduced more restaurants, more economic, transit-oriented development, we actually see that work opportunities have really driven the immigrant waves that we see and have seen for the last 50 years. So the majority of our community members are working in restaurant industries, domestic work, construction, landscaping, and because we live near public transit, that's also a great opportunity for people to be able to travel and find work. And yes, people are finding work even if they are not legally eligible to work. But that's the reality of America. I think our economy thrives off of immigrant workers. And so we're also here to talk about some of the myths that are very common misconceptions about immigrants and immigration. One being that immigrants steal jobs from American workers, children of immigrants are not citizens, immigrants do not pay taxes, and crime rates are higher among immigrant populations. And I think it's important for us to recognize that these are myths. Actually, immigrants do not collect in excess of government benefits because they are not eligible for them. They contribute $229 billion in our economic output in New York State alone and make up 28% of our workforce. Under our Constitution, any person in the U.S. born in the U.S. is a U.S. citizen, regardless of immigration status of the person's parents. So children of immigrants are citizens. And immigrants do pay taxes. In fact, at the Community Resource Center, we are very grateful to provide tax filing clinics because it's the #1 requested, other than children's enrichment programs and workforce development. People want to pay their taxes and they want to help. They need help trying to figure out our complex tax system. One of the biggest fears an immigrant has is owing Theosam. We do not want that because it potentially affects your potential citizenship status if immigration reform were ever a reality in this country. And lastly, crime rates are not higher among immigrant populations. In fact, quite the opposite. Immigrants fall victim to crimes more often than not, such as wage theft, domestic violence, and scams, and are more likely not to report these crimes because of fear of retaliation due to their immigration status. So immigrants are not perpetuating crimes. They're actually victim to crimes. For this reason, a community resource center exists, and a lot of other community-based organizations around Westchester County. There are approximately 54,000 undocumented immigrants in Westchester County, and while CRC serves people who are mixed status and maybe undocumented, documented, living with children, with American-born children, documented, we do serve and are happy to connect these families to predominantly workforce development. That's the number one reason people connect with CRC, is because they either want training or job placement, and we do that through our hiring hall. We also see a lot of asylum seekers who are joining our community, and we connect them to our case management services, which is our firsthand crisis response to helping families, enroll their children in schools or have, find housing and shelter. And then we're connecting them to legal services and, of course, our advocacy and organizing, which is really critical to the work that we do. And I just, I'm sad that we can't see the video of this family that we welcomed. It's a family, the Espinosa Borrero family, and they arrived here about 5 years ago, refugees from Venezuela. And they are just an example of what a family can do when it is welcomed in the community. This is a family that came with 3 children, enrolled them in the school district, have worked really hard to learn the language, to get their OSHA training so they could work in construction, to be involved parents in the community. During Ida, they lost everything. Their home was completely flooded because they live in the flats area of the Village of Mamaroneck. But they slowly picked the pieces up of their life and rebuilt it. And in December of 2022, this family invested in a local business in Mamaroneck, in the Village of Mamaroneck. It's called La Casa, where they're bringing Venezuelan food like arepas, entertainment to our own village, and are helping to grow our economy because they're employing people. So this is what the American dream is, that people are seeking when they come here, and how we can welcome them in our school district, in our community, and allow for people to build a life here and thrive. And yes, they are contributing to our economy and making our community better than it is. So we do have Rohan here, who is going to be sharing his story if he's ready to. Rohan is from India and is going to share his experience about why he fled from his home after being persecuted for his religious beliefs. Hi, Rohan.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being here with us.
Right. So I was born in India, and I studied in a Christian school initially, but then my family, my father, basically, he was believed in Hinduism. So I was actually crushed between 2 religions, and during my 8th grade, I was shifted to a different school, which was completely very strict. So I started getting bullied out there, because of my skin color and all, and because of my religious belief, where I studied in Christian school. And after completing my school, my family, they have sent me to the village of to my relatives in India, and with no money and everything. So I used to do some odd jobs to support my college. But my dad was really on the strict side. But then when I came back after my college, my dad and my family was very strict to me. And but then in 2015, I went to a Muslim country to start working for myself, but then nobody agreed on me to go to live in a Muslim country and work there. but then I was really excited to go and live in a Muslim country. But there I got to meet lot many people from the same religion, the Christianity religion. And 2018 probably I changed my religion from Hinduism to Christianity. But in 2019 when I came back to home, my family has the same belief, and they've been very strict on certain things with the belief I had. And in 2020 probably there I decided to leave my family back home and then to flew to this country. So it's been now 2 years that I've been living in this country. I have no support in this country right now, as I came all alone. And it's been 2 to 3 years that I've not even spoken to my family. And whatever the money which I have had made during all this struggle, all these years, that is also has been taken by my family, uh, to to see me struggling for no reason. So somehow, um, all these years were not easy enough for me to uh, be there. But then still, life goes on, and I'm trying my best to you know fulfill my dreams, whatever I have believed in.
Thank you, Rohan. I know that you have struggled so much. And I think the biggest part that we all want people like you to know is that you're not alone.
Right.
You have us as a community. You have community-based organizations, and we are so happy to be able to welcome you and support you and empower you to make your dreams come true in this country.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
Thank you. And Rohan was connected to our community justice program. It is our legal services program that we're so lucky to have in the community. I think almost everyone would prefer not to live in the shadows. And navigating our current immigration system and legal system is impossible without an attorney. So we are really lucky to have people that are supporting people like Rohan to navigate the system, apply for asylum, apply for refugee status, and make it so that they can become self-reliant and continue to thrive in this country. At CRC, we are seeing a number of asylum seekers and or new migrants come up from the southern border. We actually have 19 families on our list right now in Westchester County that are arriving or have arrived since May through the Governor Abbott's kind of migrant bus issue that we had from Florida and or Texas. And so what happens with these families, they are mostly arriving in droves of families. They have nothing, no belongings or documentation, and are pretty much confused once they arrive to New York City. After traveling and kind of word of mouth, they make their way down to Westchester County. This is nothing new. We have seen waves of immigrants come up over the course of many, many years. I think the difference is the way that families are being kind of used as pawns to make a statement on our immigration system. But we can help families find stability, connect to English classes and job opportunities, because that's what people want. As Frank said, people do not want to rely and be depending on anybody, and certainly not our government system. So these are families that we're happy to integrate in a healthy way and help them connect to job opportunities and employment when possible, and certainly housing when possible. And housing is an issue in Westchester County, and we absolutely recognize that and are working in coalition with local community organizations and our local county and village and town municipalities to figure out what's the best way to support families who have already lived in this community for many, many years and are struggling with the housing issues, but also families that are arriving and are new to our community and how to support them.
Jirandy, on behalf of the whole board of the summit, I'm sure on behalf of people who are watching and listening, we want to thank you for this work. This is such valuable work. And Rohan for stepping forward and explaining this difficulty from a personal viewpoint and how you're enduring, and we're behind you. What I want to do now, oh, you got it. What I want to do now is move to questions and answers, because we've covered a lot of topics, but some have arisen in the chat. Others, we pre-formulated. So for this, I turn it over to Anne. If you can handle that.
Yeah, so just a reminder, if you do have a question, there is a Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Please just type those questions. We don't have any questions. One thing what is the best way for people to help? So we have all these refugees coming and you guys do amazing things. How can we help as listening to all this, and we want to reach out? What is the best way to help you all with all you're doing for refugees? I don't know, you want to start with Frank or?
Okay. For us, the biggest challenges we face with our clients and the organizations like us is affordable housing and employment. And if anyone knows of affordable housing or housing in general, that would be, let us know. The second thing is if you know of employment, you run a small company, company here in Westchester, and you have openings, and you're willing to have someone from Ukraine or Afghanistan come and work from you, or other places around the world, that would let us know. We're always on the lookout for employment opportunities for ours, and many of them come here. I didn't mention this, but many of the refugees come here. From Ukraine, Afghanistan, Burma, some of these other countries. They come here and they might be literally doctors and nurses, or they are CPA, equivalent of CPAs, or have, office managers. But those skill sets are not easily transferable, or those degrees aren't easily transferable. So being able to look at someone's job experience rather than, I graduated from, NYU or something. They graduated from a school in Kabul or somewhere else. Take a chance on them and give them the opportunities.
Yes, absolutely. And for us also, I agree, work opportunities are the best way to support a family. As we were mentioning, people want to earn their living. And so we do have a hiring hall with our worker center. If you need a domestic worker, a trained domestic worker, because we do train nannies with We Rise Nanny training. We connect people with day laborers who have certain skill sets that can help you during the day or a weekend, or shoveling snow, that kind of stuff. Those kind of work opportunities are available through our hiring hall at the Community Resource Center's Worker Center. And I would also say, if you'd like to get involved and just be have a life-changing experience, we are always looking for volunteers. Yes, whether that's English classes or joining our advocacy department or our different coalitions. I know our English classes we're partnering with the Village of Mamaroneck right now to provide English classes, and that class has people from Paraguay, Guatemala, France, Brazil, Japan. I think it's a beautiful way for us to build community and fortify these three municipalities that we're so lucky to live in.
If I could, so I would also add that, volunteers are good. You visit our websites, promote refugees and immigrants coming here to people you talk to. We need furniture many times donated. And of course, I'll just put one plug in for both CRC and us. We won't turn away a check.
Absolutely.
We have a hand up from the audience. It's Shirley Hilton has her hand up.
Hi, Shirley.
Or you can speak now, Shirley.
Yeah, you're muted, Shirley.
Oh, yeah, the mute.
Shirley, make sure you're unmuted.
And I believe Rohan wanted to answer the question as well while we're waiting for Shirley.
Shirley, can you unmute your microphone on your desktop, please?
Was Rohan going to answer the other question?
Oh, what is the? Hold on. Just,
And do you have that? Is that from Janet?
And while Rohan answers, I'll just answer really quickly. The name of the Venezuelan restaurant that's been opened by this refugee family is called La Casa, and it's in the village of Mamaroneck, right where the whiskey corner used to be. And they have karaoke on Fridays, so if you want to have some fun, fine.
All right, we're making note of that.
And there's a question about the link. The link will be shared through different avenues and through the website at Larchmont Mamaroneck Summit. So on our website as well. So that link, so the link to this and through LMC will be shared so that you can spread the word. And I'm sorry, Rohan, did you want to answer?
what is the? I don't find the questions.
I think it's how much assistance does the U.S. government give refugees? And Rohan can answer, or Frank, if you have an answer.
Or formal refugees coming in through the refugee program. Each refugee gets a little bit more than $1,000 one-time payment, and that's called what they used to refer to as RMP money, for resettlement and placement. Refugees, the broader category, people coming in under, say, humanitarian parole, temporary protective status, United for Ukraine, they get nothing of that. But they then are all eligible, typically eligible for food stamps and Medicaid, and there's various levels of temporary financial assistance if they qualify for it. So there's basically a whole bunch of benefits that they're available to, but they only true refugees or former refugees get some money from the government. And family of four, you're getting basically $1,000. I mean, $10,000 doesn't go very far. As Jirandy said, it's pretty expensive to live here.
And Frank, people have to be, if I can clarify, people have to be notified that they have to have that information. So you would let them know, Jirandy, the organization would let them know that they qualify. Yes.
And if the refugees come here with a lot of work already done, for those that don't have that, just as Jirandy does, we help them file for their what they call their EAD, which is an employment authorization document, get them their social security cards, help them apply for SNAP and Medicaid and all those other benefits. We also, as Jirandy said, we also help them with their taxes and various other things.
All right.
And John, you have a question?
Yeah,
Do you have your hand up, John?
yeah, I have my hand up. I'd rather wait for questions. A family, I'm going to posit, kind of collective situation I've heard from lots of different people. A family from Guatemala, a family that's not much in the news these days, was in the past. They're not political. They've never been in a political party. They've never done much of anything other than try to farm or run a small business or work. But they've been caught in a crossfire, or guerrillas have come and tried to extort money from them, or tried to extort their daughter to become the concubine of a leader. That goes on a fair amount, but is it really directed by the government? Do they have any legal basis to be anything other than undocumented when they get here?
No, thanks for this question, John. And I think there's a serious struggle because a lot of the new migrants that come into this country actually do fear for their lives, and are seeking a better life because of all the reasons that John said. And Bertha, who is our staff attorney, is on the chat, and can help me answer this question. But I think sometimes it's just a luck of the draw. Like if you come up and you are at the border and you happen to get an official who may grant you asylum, not officially asylum, there's a process for seeking asylum. But it's really a luck of the draw. It depends on who you get. And once you're here, there are certain there's proof that you have to have in order to fully qualify for asylum. And the truth of the matter is that many people do not qualify for asylum. So then they end up staying here as new migrants because they even though voluntarily they could return home, for them that's not a choice, because of economic circumstances. Maybe their government is in despair and they could potentially die. So you can only have asylum if you are harmed because of your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or the fact that you're a part of a particular social group. Actually, Nicaraguans, who John was asking this question before the panel, but Nicaraguans actually fare better in U.S. immigration courts compared to people from neighboring countries. Asylum seekers from Nicaragua are 36% more likely to get asylum if they apply within a 12-month period. And people from Guatemala are only 12% likely to be granted asylum. So that's a huge difference between our different countries from Central America.
I'd also like to point out that our as you can imagine, our immigration system isn't colorblind. The situation you mentioned, John, happens throughout Central America with a lot of the violence, and they had internal civil wars and all the rest, and they struggle to get here and be given any chance. And yet a European country like Ukraine, there's a war breaks out. Yeah, it's a war, but in some ways, in lots of parts of the Ukraine, it's no different. They're not in immediate danger. And we set up United for Ukraine. Let's let 100,000 in. And because they're from Europe, they get an easier way to get in than refugees and asylum seekers from elsewhere around the world. It's not fair, but it's the way it works.
Thank you. And the reason I picked Guatemala for my hypothetical is because I knew what Jirandy was just saying, that you can get it a lot more easy if you come from Nicaragua than if you can come from Honduras or from Guatemala. And those are probably largely political decisions that have nothing to do with the individual at all. That's what
I'd just like to, very interesting conversation, but I want to, actually, just something really occurs to me, Anne, if I can intercede with my question. Just last year, the Biden administration began some sort of circles. So if a few people get together and raise a certain finite amount of money, they can form what might be called a circle. Can someone explain that law, Frank or Fred?
The government was, before the Ukraine or the Afghan evacuations, most refugees came in through one of 9 refugee resettlement agencies. And those numbers, someone asked on the question was how many come in? Tens of thousands last year came in under the formal refugee program. But then when the Afghan evacuation happened, they let in 80 to 100,000. And then under United for Ukraine, it's been 100,000 and still coming from both those countries. What they tried to do is that during, and this, I'm not going to be political, just a statement of fact. During the prior administration under Trump, a lot of the resettlement infrastructure was dismantled. They cut funding, they cut the number of refugees dramatically. A lot of the resettlement agencies had to lay off a lot of staff, and they're all rebuilding. And a way to help that, like what happened with Ukraine and Afghanistan, and now they extended it to other countries, they created these things called welcome circles or welcome corps. And the idea is that it's an older model of, 5-10 people can get together and agree to sponsor a family and pay and agree to basically support them for a period of time. It's very informal. You have to get trained. You have to get background checks. You have to basically make a formal commitment to support these people. And it's just a way to try to increase the numbers of people coming in. Under this new welcome corps, the government's hoping to get 5,000 refugees in, which is not, it's a drop in the bucket in terms of all the refugees that are out.
Thank you for that.
I hope you answered your question. Andrew, do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, on circles, and I think that that's certainly allowable for people who are refugees and seeking support in that way. I will say that I think people in this community form informal circles, and the reason why people can find a place to stay even for a month is because our immigrants communities are helping each other. I think we all know what that struggle is, and we're all willing to support one another, and that's a really beautiful thing. When we can support one another, maybe lend a home or give a posada for just a few weeks while somebody settles, it's certainly an informal way to support our community while they get back on their feet.
Thank you. And is there a sort of a wrap-up question? Because we know we try to end formally at 9, but we probably have many more questions.
Yes, there's been a wealth of information. I thank you all very much. John, you have another question? Your hand is up? Or
the other one that would probably take 4 hours for Bertha to answer. Do any of these groups in the long run have a path to citizenship?
Why don't you go first? You go first.
Go ahead, Frank. I think that yes, Bertha's saying yes, they do, and it a lot of it depends on our immigration system, and it depends on how you're categorized. Are you a new migrant? Are you an asylum seeker, or a refugee? But we are very happy to have supported a lot of new American citizens. If you stop by the CRC right before the flood, you saw that we had a wall welcoming and celebrating all of the new American citizens that we were able to support in getting their citizenship status. And that comes after years and years of work, and certainly through the support of legal services like our community justice program. There are ways, but we do have a broken immigration system, and there's a lot of work that we have to do at that ground level. But Frank, maybe you have a more positive way to answer that question.
No, I agree. It depends on your status. So if you come in as a formal refugee, after a year, you get a green card, and you're allowed to. You can apply for citizenship after 5 years of being here. As a matter of fact, the first refugee we welcomed was a single man from Pakistan back in March of 2017, and he's already a U.S. citizen. He just got his citizenship last year. So like 5 years and 1 month, he had his citizenship. For people who come here under like the United for Ukraine or the allies thing from Afghanistan and some of these other ones where people are getting either temporary protective status, Haitians or some Venezuelans or others, or under humanitarian parole, they get temporary residency. They get 18 months to 2 years, and they have to keep reapplying or then seek asylum themselves. They don't get permanent residency. All of them, though, are, because they're here legally, they can apply for permanent residency and ultimately citizenship. There is a path for many of them, not all of them, but many of them have that. So refugees for sure, other people, it's dependent on their circumstances.
And if you're just here undocumented, but
I'll leave that one from
but you've
Jirandy.
been here for 20 years.
Our long-term journey for undocumented individuals is still to be determined. I think what we are hoping for is for DACA, people who are children who come here under the DACA status or deferred action, for them to have a pathway to citizenship is absolutely critical. And we also are fighting for workers, worker communities who have lived here decades and decades and have contributed to our own economic growth in New York and in the United States, and also deserve a pathway to citizenship.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to do, Ann and John, if this is okay, we're at that 9 o'clock, a few minutes after. We can stay on a few more minutes, but this will sort of conclude, the formal part of the program, even though we started those few minutes late. Our apologies. We do want to say that on behalf of the local summit, we're so glad you're sharing and you're here with us today. And we meet on the second Tuesday of each month, and we're doing it virtually by Zoom. And in March, I believe it's March 8th. No, March 7th, March 14th. Ann, can you confirm that that is the second Tuesday in March?
I believe, yeah.
You're my brain over there.
I'm so focused on today.
I know, but that Elaine always makes mention of the upcoming meeting, and it's going to be an update from our municipal leaders.
Our next program is Valentine's Day.
What?
Right,
No.
but March 14th.
March.
So
March.
we really want to, let me go back and really heartfully thank Jirandy and Frank for imparting all this information, but beyond that, showing their hearts and their dedication to this very worthy effort, which is a continuing, ongoing effort, which we all should be aware of, if not contribute to in any way we can. And we are going to include in our chat some of the organizations, the ones represented by Frank and Jirandy and others. So you can check them out, see how you, learn more and perhaps participate in that volunteer effort.
And thank you so much, Rohan, for sharing your story. We really appreciate your insight. And again, just thank you again. And please help these organizations. They need your help, and reach out and do what you can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
you all for
all
having
joining
us.
Hope to see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.